Hello and welcome to another episode of Old World Agriculture. In this episode, we'll talk about a popular fruit from the ancient world that's gone into obscurity due to various traits. The medlar. The medlar was well known in Europe during the Middle Ages, where it's said to have a high place among the cultivated fruits. In modern days, it is obscure, very rarely eaten or grown fruit. It remained in cultivation in the 16 and 1700s, and even in the 1800s, but interest in cultivation declined over the centuries. It's even more obscure in the United States as well, with almost no one having ever tasted the fruit. And as of the writing of this paper, there was no examples of the species Acephalus germanica within the New York Botanical Garden. The fruit we're talking about is, of course, the medlar. The medlar's origin in geographical history was investigated by Nikolai Vavilov, who estimated that it was in the Near Eastern center of origin of cultivated plants, although still others suggested that it was probably native to Central or Southern Europe. Still another researcher assigned the origin to Crimea. Based on current evidence, at least as of the writing of this paper, it was found that the medlar had become naturalized in much of Southern Europe, as well as parts of Eastern Europe. The countries where the medlars naturalized include Austria, Belgium, Britain, Czechoslovakia, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, Spain, and Yugoslavia. It is unknown when the medlar was introduced to North America, but it's likely that it was known within the southern United States for at least 2 centuries. It's postulated that it was brought to the United States from France by the French Jesuits alongside the Jesuit pears. However, this hypothesis was disproved when it was revealed that the medlars described were actually loquats, and there's no known cultivation of true medlar in Louisiana today. There's some speculations regarding a fruit called a russetin, which is estimated to be a medlar. Whether or not that's true remains unknown. There's also rumors that it was growing within Florida, but that's ill-conceived considering it needs frost in order to function, and Florida does not have that level of frost. From a distribution across Europe, it appears to have been first cultivated in Eurasia. Following that, it spread throughout Europe. It is currently grown within Germany, Poland, the countries that once made up the USSR, Iran, and Israel. The medlar is not grown in China except in several botanical gardens. The medlar also came to Africa, specifically Egypt, Algeria, and North Africa and South Africa, around the 17th century. One of the reasons why medlars have gone into obscurity is because of the need for bletting. This is a process where you either allow the fruit to ripen until they turn brownish in coloration and soft, or you let the fruit get damaged by frosts. Regular fruit are too astringent to eat raw and must be damaged by the environment to be edible. The art of bletting is effectively a controlled rotting or partial fermentation of the fruit. Once the fruit's fully bletted, the flavor is akin to a wine-like flavor commonly found in certain types of apples. Still others describe it as tasting like apple butter with an aromatic quality and a spicy richness. Still yet another individual described it as somewhere between a tamarind and a rotten apple. The fruit, once bletted, can be eaten out of hand or made into different types of foods, such as marmalades, jellies, vinegars, syrups, wines, brandies, sauces, and various other confectionery items. The opinion of the medlar in modern days varies. Some consider it a fruit of very low value. Others say it's the best fruit ever. And these divisive opinions are based on the fact that it's very difficult to tell the difference between a rotted medlar and a bletted medlar. And the methods of bletting vary from person to person and group to group, so the proper way of bletting remains only slightly well known. This fruit has also been historically used in medicine, mostly in the 18th century and earlier. This declined in the 19th century, although an echo of it still remained in the 20th century. Medlars were historically used to treat kidney and bladder stones and prevent memory loss. It was also one of the key ingredients in the medical potion of the ancient times called Syrupus myrtellus. This is a mixture of medlar, myrtle, various types of berries, sandalwood, sumac, barberries, and quinces, and pomegranates and sugar. This was used as an all-purpose healing salve and a means of preventing vomiting. The medlar likewise has been used for wood and a source of tannins, as well as a rootstock for grafting pears and quince. The medlar has also historically been used as an ornamental. It is considered one of the best ornamental trees in the United Kingdom, at least at the writing of this paper. And there's been frequent recommendations for use of this plant as a source of shrubbery or a lawn tree. Now onto the origins of the name. Based on the work of Dr. Hogg, the name Medlar is derived from the ancient Saxon language as a consequence of it being used to make fermented wine called mead. And it makes sense considering the Anglo-Saxon word for mead is medu or meadow, and that's only a small jump away from medlar. Still others say it was derived from the Greek word mesphision, which then was evolved to create the word Melphelsus, the scientific term for the genus for medlar, and it's from that word that Meslar, the French word for medlar, was formed, and from there became medlar. Variant spellings with medlar have also been Meddler, which is also the ancient word for intercourse. And there was old bits of folklore talking about the fruit looking like a pair of buttocks, so it could be derived from the actual word medlar. Now on to the possible and confirmed instances of medlar within human history. In the 3rd to 1st millennium BC, cuneiform sources mention a fruit tree called Sennar in Sumerian and Celero in Akkadian. This was then translated into plum. Another word was also found called Gissener, which was translated into medlar, although this is only a possibility. Dr. Evenroth speculated that the culture of medlar began 10,000 years BC, since the greatest level of genetic diversity was found on the west shore of the Caspian region. In Azerbaijan, where it occurs at almost all altitudes, it is likely that this plant was domesticated in this area in ancient times. In the 7th century BC, the Greek word Mespilia, the progenitor of the Latin word Mesophilus, our scientific term for the species, makes its first known appearance in a poem by the Greek poet Archicarius in the Aegean island of Pyros. Although it's unknown what the word meant, most people assume it meant medlar, but it definitely refers to a tree. It's plausible that domesticated medlars were brought over at this time, although truly wild ones can still be found in that region, so it could refer to a wild species. Dr. Seggs speculated that between 700 and 530 BC, that medlars were grown in Babylonian gardens. One fact that we do know of, between 600 BC and 50 AD, the Greeks introduced the medlar to their colony in Marsala, or Marseille in modern days. This country fell to Rome in 49 AD, and from there spread to southern France. Between the 5th and 4th century BC, the word Mesophyllon became an actual word, first used as far as we know by the Greek poet Amphis, a contemporary of Plato. It was translated as medlar by Liddell and Dr. Scott in more modern eras, although Dr. Henn equated it with Cornus mas. Based on the works of Pliny and Cato, it is speculated that a tree called Satana, which has been identified as a medlar, was introduced in the 3rd to 2nd century BC, although it's more likely that the medlar arrived in 150 BC after the Macedonian Wars. Between 50 BC and 400 AD, following the conquest of Gaul, the Romans introduced a medlar into northern France and southwestern Germany, although some speculate it was already introduced by the Greeks and the Romans just found it. In the 1st century AD, Dioscorus wrote about a tree called Epimediadia, or Cetalon, which is described as having the same properties as a medlar. The researcher Dr. Johnson found that in the 2nd century AD, that the medlar was pre-Roman in origin, likely introduced by Greeks. At the same time, it was discussed by Palladius, a Roman writer in agriculture. Skipping to the 9th century AD, The medlar was one of the prescribed plants listed by Charlemagne the Frank's decree concerning towns as mandatory in the gardens of the king's estates. It was also found in the inventories of 2 German gardens. There's also a plan that was not realized for a cemetery to be built that had 14 different trees, one of which would have been a medlar. In the 10th century AD, the Anglo-Saxon author and churchman Alfric made note of the medlar in his book regarding agriculture. In the 12th century AD, it was mentioned by a German Benedictine nun, Saint Hildegard, the first German female naturalist and lady doctor, who used the tree's roots to treat fevers. In the 13th century AD, the medlar was mentioned by the English scholar Alexander Neckham, and mentioned that weapons made from medlar wood were used to fight legal duels. During this time, there was written instructions dug up that made requests for medlars for different gardens in monasteries. An agricultural writer also discussed the various best fruits to be grown, which include the medlar. This writer was called Cecil. In the 14th century AD, the Italian writer on agriculture, Pietro Crescenzi, referred to the medlar, and Mr. Chaucer, the writer of the Canterbury Tales, likewise made mention of the medlar. It was also mentioned that a famous preserve called Cottagnac was made from medlar. During the 15th and early 16th century, Shakespeare made use of the medlar in his plays. In the 16th century, King Henry VIII received a gift of multiple different fruit which included medlars, and was also used extensively in art, as seen on this image. Now we'll conclude with some folklore. One bit of folklore was that it was believed that apples would revert back to their wild nature if grown near medlars. This was called degeneration, and so it's recommended that medlars should be planted a proper distance away from apple and pear trees. This was refuted by Dr. Lindley, who confirmed that this does not happen. On the Maltese Islands, the folklore suggests that medlar does not cause degeneration of apple, but that the medlar is a progenitor of the apple. This is of course false, considering that regular apples have ancestry in crab apples, but that's neither here nor there. And that about covers everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this video. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to me on BitChute for a greater variety of content, 4 videos a week. And thank you to all my subscribers on both platforms. I appreciate it.